Greetings and welcome to the Recombobulation Area. My name is Dan Schaefer. Thank you for joining us. We have a very special guest today who is going to be talking with us about a new poll of the Democratic primary for governor here in Wisconsin. I have been a huge fan of this guy's work for quite some time. Longtime Recombobulation Area subscribers know that I write a preview of every race on the ballot in the Wisconsin state legislature. And his research is always a core piece of that preview. So I'm eternally grateful to him for all of that wonderful data. He is now the executive director of State Navigate, which, as I mentioned, just released a poll on the Wisconsin governor's race. And his name is Chaz Nuttycombe. Chaz, welcome to the Recombobulation Area.
Thank you for having me on. And I'm sorry our very final Wisconsin forecast was a little toward the very end more bullish on them than I thought it than it actually turned out to be. But I blame Ann Stelzer for that. So we had Republicans favored us in the assembly. That was the one chamber I really wanted to get right. I wrote a lot on that chamber in 2024. And I had like a draft of, reasoning for why I thought Todd Novak was going to win. And then this whole Seltzer bill dropped. So things changed. But I feel good about what we have this year.
Yeah.
And we're good at polling. But we're here to talk about.
Yeah, well, Todd Novak has beaten the odds before, and so his race is going to be one to watch again this year in Wisconsin as well. But I think you still have had in past years, you've had like 98 of 99 state assembly races, correct? So
yeah,
pretty good
nationally, we typically hit 96 to 97% of state legislative races, right? For the generals,
yeah. Well, it's terrific work, and we're going to be drawing on it along with some other sources again this year for our preview too. So looking forward to that. But that's not the big news of today, though, is it? The big news of today is you with some partners that we are friends with here at the Recombobulation Area as well, Main Street Action and UpNorthNews, have just put out a new poll on the Wisconsin Democratic primary. We are 2 weeks away from the August 11th election day. And boy, there is a pretty clear front runner at this point in this race. So I have a few questions for you, but why don't you walk us through, the top line takeaways and what you found in this poll?
Yeah, I mean, I think this primary is over at this point. I mean, Francesca Hong, she's got a 30-point lead. This is her best poll she's had. I think the others, there was one like out last week that had her up 20. I think that was a candidate's internal. I think it was either Crowley's or Barnes. So when you look at those internals, our poll's kind of like somewhere in the middle between the Crowley and Barnes numbers. I think it's closer to what the Crowley people had for in their PPP poll for Barnes, and Barnes had himself up in 20 something. I'm going to guess, but I'm saying this is my guess because they haven't released the full poll. I think the Barnes number probably is after like informed bios or something. This is what campaigns like to do, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They can release it and prove me wrong. So yeah, I mean, we've got Francesca Hong at 44%, David Crowley at 15%, and Barnes at 14%. And then in the early vote, it's kind of tracking similar to the general, but not the whole, not the general, the whole electorate, I should say. Hong's at 43% with people who have already voted. That's about 11% of the sample. And then Barnes is at 18%. Rodriguez is at 16%. However, in the whole poll, she's at only 4%, right? So you definitely have some people who were voting for Rodriguez while she was in the race, and probably not people who are voting early for return their absentees, or I know this first day of early in-person voting really anymore going into the election. And then we get Crowley at 11%. Not really interested in talking about, I mean, yeah, sure, Roy's and Brennan are at 4%. They're not going to win. I don't think anybody else is going to win besides Hong, but they're especially not going to win. I don't know why they're in the race.
Yeah. But that seemed clear to me after the Marquette poll last week, even though the poll did not have Crowley in the race and whatever, the numbers for Royce and Brennan were really low. And at that point, it just seemed like the end of the road. Both good people. I've interviewed both of them here at the recombobulation area. Uh, only one winner, right? So that's where we're at. And right now, I mean, it seems like Hong's race to lose right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this primary is done. Maybe there'll be a shakeup. Maybe she hits the elderly disabled veteran with her car or something. I don't know. And then maybe the race changes.
Don't want
But
to even put that out into the world, but
yeah, but I mean, otherwise, I mean, unless she has some sort of big scandal or screws up, I mean, she wins, right? And I think I don't know why, like the forces that be or whatever, governor, right, wanted Crowley to get back in, like, because Crowley's mostly taken from Barnes voters, almost
Mm,
certainly. I mean, if you look at the second choices, we asked people for second choice in the poll, right?
yeah,
Um, uh, and so if you look at the Crowley voters, um, 34% have Barnes as their backup, and then it goes to 18% for Hong. The Barnes voters are right down the middle between Crowley and Hong. 27% have Crowley as their backup. 26% have Hong as their backup. So whoever decision this is, people want to say it's the governor's or whoever, or is it the governor or whoever's decision it is. They are not the sharpest cheddar in the cheese cave. For if the goal was to prevent Hong from being the nominee, because this just solidified her as the nominee, and I think people on like Twitter have said that. I think this started as like I think Hong has also been smart to not like lean into left wing narratives of like the establishment's trying to stop me or anything. Because like, first off, why bother? They're not stopping you too. We also asked voters about, like on a 10-point scale, 10 being democratic socialist, 1 being extremely conservative. Where do you put yourself on this ideological scale, right? And so Hong is at a 9. The average voter is at a 7.3, right? Um, and so there's a big for, she's at a 9 for where people see her for the whole sample, right?
right.
So there's this big distance between like the average voter and her. So she's not just appealing to like, the 21% of the sample that she's dominating with. 21% of the sample identify as Democratic Socialist, which obviously she is. Um, but, so she's actually appealing to, like, kind of the more middle of the road voters a little bit as well. Obviously, a big chunk of her support comes from the super, super lefty voters, but still. So I thought that was interesting. I think, um, the other things I think are really interesting in the poll, like, for crosstab wise, I mean, you look at I don't know if you said you wanted to pull up a graphic. I'm guessing you're talking about the word cloud or something?
I mean, there's so much. I was going to pull up the second choice. I was going to pull up the whatever
Yeah,
else.
go ahead. Go ahead and pull up the word cloud if you're able to do that.
Yeah, sure. 1 second here.
So we
Uh,
we asked voters, in their own words, what is going to be the biggest issue that has an impact on your vote for this primary, right? And so they could type whatever they wanted. We were hoping they would just give one issue, and a lot did, but some, put multiple issues. But we made sure we had that in there for how we segmented the results. But look how big data centers is there, man. Um,
Unbelievable.
and anyone who listed data centers in their, answer, she's getting, like, 87% of the vote with those voters,
Right.
right? And that is, what? 8% of the primary vote, listed data centers in their answer. The number 1, was electability, being Tiffany, whatever you wanna say. It doesn't appear as much, compared to data centers here because everyone's saying, like, different things, right? Beat Tiffany, defeat Tiffany, electability, right? So yeah, we have that, and you can see like what percent of the sample said what.
And
But
just for our folks who are only listening to this as an audio podcast too, so we're showing a map. It's kind of a word cloud type graphic that you have put together that shows kind of the top issues impacting people's votes. And I would say the 3 biggest words here in this state of Wisconsin graphic are healthcare, data centers, and affordability.
yeah, and she's
Um,
winning on affordability too. I mean,
yeah,
If we go, let me pull up the results here. Among people who say affordability in their answer, she has 65% of the vote, right? Um, People who say something about being anti-Trump or anti-Republicans or some sort of partisan answer, she's got pretty much what she has in the whole sample, 43%. Healthcare, she's got 50% of the vote. People who say something about like, oh, I want the candidate to be a good person or whatever, yada yada. She's got 35% of the vote. In the economy, she's got 36, education 37, social issues, right? Protecting trans rights or immigrant neighbors, whatever, something like that, right? She's or uh Israel, I don't know how we coded that one. She's got 67% of the vote. And yeah, AI data centers, they mentioned that in their answer. She's got 86% of the vote among those voters. And so that's sort of the thing that I've been seeing not just in these primaries. I've seen it in Republican primaries too. This is such a big issue in this election. And the establishment politicians on both sides of the aisle, right, are afraid, frankly, that the money behind AI, the money behind data centers, if they campaign against them, it's going to go flood in and attack them. Right. That's why they're not talking about it because this is a thing that is making people rabid. And again, like we saw this in Utah when we were polling Republican Utah primaries, where people were really, really, really pissed about this, Kevin O'Leary data center near the Great Salt Lake. And you had some incumbents who lost because of that. The Senate president, in part, lost because of the data centers. And he's been in there for almost 2 decades in the Utah State Senate. So, I think this, and there's a clip yesterday of like some John James supporters or just some Republicans who had like
There was a
anti-data center signs
there
at
was
the
a
ShopRite.
protest effectively in Michigan over
Right,
this among
right.
Republican voters. Yeah.
I uh, have family who lives out in the sticks, and they're pissed about these, and they went straight Democrat for that. They're three-time Trump voters, and they went straight Democrat in Virginia last year because they're pissed off because Governor Youngkin, was pretty much supporting the data centers and everything, and Spanberger, was actually kind of campaigning against them. However, she hasn't really governed as hard against them, I would say, with the budget fight that we've had here. And so this is something I think Hong, there are very strong concerns. I think for anyone who's like Hong can't win a general election, right? I mean, she'll get nuked in the WoW, right? Waukesha, Ozaki, and Washington County. She's going to get nuked there. I think the two strong points she has in a general election, because she's going to be the nominee. This is done. Um, is that she's really harpened and made a focal point of her campaign this anti-data center moratorium, right?
Yes.
Um, I
I
think
would
that
say I've written too that I think it's the number one reason that she has taken off to the degree that she has, and being the
yep,
only candidate. Not just that she has taken the position, but being the only candidate who has taken that data center moratorium position.
right,
Because I do think that, if another candidate had adopted that, let's say hypothetically Calder Royce had adopted a data center moratorium position also in January, as Hong did, that would have
yeah,
given those anti-data center voters choice. But
right.
instead, they're just all going to Hong.
Exactly. And again, this is not like a left wing issue or right wing or right wing issue, in particular, right, for one or the other. It is both. I grew up in Tea Party country, right? So I go to this meeting because I want to see what it's like when they're talking about this proposal for a data center. I have not seen such anger in my community. And when I say Tea Party country, like I lived in Eric Cantor's district, right? That's where I'm from. People were pissed off about these things. It went to like a party. I'm in Richmond in the city, so uber liberal people and everything. People my age have like the septum piercings and the dyed hair and all that thing, right? So I go to a party last week, and this prompted a tweet where it was like I was like I was there with my roommate, and I was talking about because I've used Claude for helping generate like these crosstabs because they're a pain in the butt to generate. Helping design the briefing. It took a lot of work to be able to get it to look good.
It
But
looks
either way,
great, by the way. Would recommend
thank
all
you.
of our listeners and followers to go check that out. Yeah.
But anyway, I was talking to my roommate about like Claude, and I said the word tokens, and like this group of people who very much look like like they look like they're from Dane, Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Like if for a white person from Dane, Wisconsin or Richmond, Virginia, right? And they're like, "What are y'all talking about?" I'm like, "AI." And they tore in, and I throw out my roommate in front of me, not literally, but I'm like, he uses more tokens than me, right? So people, I think especially on, I would say the most conservative, most liberal people are the most pissed off about this. I would guess. I don't have any data to back that up. But
So I'll share an example on that, though, because
yep.
in Caledonia and western Racine County, which is close to like Robin Voss territory, and there was a data center hearing that my former colleague, Shali Pittman, at Civic covered when we were both at Civic Media. And she noted that there were people there opposing the data center, both from the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which has a weirdly significant presence in
Hmm.
southeastern Wisconsin, and also the people who are part of that group, Hot Government, that filed a gazillion lawsuits trying to overturn the 2020 election and
Hmm.
had like primary challenged Robin Voss from the right and all of that.
Right.
And those were kind of your two groups that were most visibly present at that data center hearing. And Microsoft eventually changed their plans and whatever else. So it is one of those issues that cuts all across traditional political lines, and we saw that in last week's Marquette poll too. And like the deep dive part of it on data centers was that this is one of those. This is like a 75-25 issue in Wisconsin.
Right. Right.
And it like
And
even
nationally, I would
more
say.
than 60% of Republicans are also opposed to this. So you've
I also
always, over the past couple of years, we've heard so many of these centrist pundits saying that Democrats need to adopt these 80-20 issues that are going to win them elections. And yet here in Wisconsin, the only candidate who has adopted this is the Democratic Socialist.
right. I think really, and on the Dem side, it's been the Democratic Socialists adopting it, and then Republicans. Republicans are a little more ideologically diverse. So like some of them are Freedom Caucus people adopting it. Some people are just like challengers or whatever. But just pretty much anybody running against an incumbent. A lot of the anti-incumbent Republican primary challengers have been running on this, and they've been doing pretty well. I mean, this is a very toxic issue, not just in primaries, but it's going to be toxic in general. And that can be something I think works for Hong. But yeah, anyway, so that was something that popped to me. Another thing that popped to me in this survey. So, uh 18 to 29-year-old voters are very hard to pull, right? Our response rate with 18 to 29 voters, right, age 18, 29, is anywhere between 0.25% to like maybe 0.8% on the high end historically. So we go in the field, and the first day, for the voters who we have data on that are 18-29, they have a higher response rate than the whole sample. Now, it evened out in the later days, and they're still on par with the whole sample. 18 to 29 voters are responding to the poll. And you can say, like, oh, that means you have like a response bias or something. But like, no, what this reminds me of is what we saw in Virginia in our constitutional amendment poll, where it was like we saw a whole bunch of responses compared to like what we're supposed to be having in our sample and our weights and everything coming from Southwest Virginia. And they were turning out. We saw it in the early voting. We saw it in the general election. So they're motivated to vote. This is I would say, definitive sign that these voters are motivated to vote, and Hong is dominating with them. She's got what, 76%, 75% of the vote among voters 18 to 29.
Yeah, I've got the crosstab
Um,
up right now. She's at 74%. The only other candidate in double digits is Mandela Barnes at 11%.
yeah, and then voters age 30, 44, she's got 67%. It's the voters above 45 she struggles with,
Right.
but she's still
There's
at
going to be a
36.
huge generation divide in this election, I think, regardless of the candidate. Obviously, it would have to take something crazy for it not to be Francesca Hong right now, as you're
Right.
suggesting. But I think, uh, like the three top candidates for the Democrats in this race are 37 years old, 39 years old, and 40 years old. Crowley's the oldest. He just turned 40. And so like
Mhm.
that, and Tom Tiffany being, in his 60s and being in, the legislature for a while, now in Congress for a while. I think there's going to be a huge, huge, huge generational divide in this general election in Wisconsin in a really significant way. And you really illustrate it with Hong. One of the things that I've been wondering about with this primary in particular is the fact, just the timing of it being in August. right? And it not being when, campuses, when college campuses have school in session, right? And so I've wondered if, like, the UW-Madison voters, or, I went to University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, like those voters who are getting activated when they get back to school and whatever it is, they're home for the summer. Some folks might, not live in Wisconsin, and come to school here, whatever it might be. Like, is that a factor in this at all too?
I mean, no. I mean, it's. I think to your point, if people are on campus, she'd be getting a majority of the vote. I think that's the only thing. She would be this. If Wisconsin had its primary right in, let's say, April, when they have those state Supreme Court elections or presidential primaries,
Right.
then she would have had this locked up long ago. I
Mhm.
think. With just everything that we had been seeing in other states and primaries and whatnot. But that's been the only thing. I think that's the only thing standing in the way of her maybe not getting majority of the vote. I think it's going to be, she's at 44%. She's 6% away with 13% undecided. Really 14% when you inform the Rodriguez and Hughes people that their candidate
Mhm.
dropped out. But those voters are older, so I think it's going to be a little bit hard for her to reach majority. But it could happen, right? Margin
Yeah.
error and everything. But yeah, I mean that's the only thing is for her to. It's hard for me to say for her to lose because it's just I just don't see it happening. But for her to like significantly underperform our poll, where she's getting something in like the 30s,
Mhm.
um, you would just have to have pretty much like all of the people in our poll who have never voted in a primary ever, which are maybe like 7% of the electorate, and then probably a half of the 1 out of 4s and 2 out of 4s, right? Because let's look at the primary propensity. Um, let's see, let's see, 1 to 4. I can't find the thing here. Oh wait, yes I can. Oh, no, I can't. I know there's oh, no, here we go, last 4 primaries. So for people who voted in the last 4 primaries, it's 29 Hong, and then 19 Crowley, 18 Barnes. And then for people who voted 3 out of 4 primaries, 38 Hong, 17 Crowley, 14 Barnes. 2 out of 4 primaries, 44 Hong, 13 Crowley, 16 Barnes. 1 out of the last 4, 57% Hong, right? So we're seeing a theme here. Obviously, this skews younger. 12% Crowley, 11% Barnes. People who never voted in a primary, 66% Hong,
Wow.
16% Crowley, and 9% Barnes. So, like, but you just don't really have that in primaries where it's like, oh, only the most engaged, only the people who vote 4 out of 4 are, a majority of the electorate or anything, right? Um, and I think especially with what we're seeing in the Democratic Party right now nationally, that's probably not going to be the case. So, like, I don't know, maybe she can get into 30s if like a lot of those 0 to 2s don't show up, but I'm inclined to believe that since they're responding to our poll that they are, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because young people don't like to be bothered by texts. They usually think they're especially political texts, they usually think it's fundraising.
Right, and it usually is. Um, so, obviously, we're talking a lot about Francesca Hong and her coalition here. I do wanna talk about what you found, at least, from the other candidates, even if it doesn't look like their chances are particularly good right now. I'm interested in kind of what each of these candidates' coalitions are to a certain extent too, because, um, you know, there's gonna be so much revisionist history about about what this primary is, and Evers' endorsement, and just like the larger big picture of the primary too. Um, for Mandela Barnes, who are the Mandela Barnes supporters that you found in this poll? Who would you say
Well,
comprises his coalition of the um, 14% of the voters that say they are backing Mandela Barnes?
I haven't dived that deep into him, but I think with what I've kind of looked at as I've glanced across crosstabs, is that I think they're kind of your run of the mill progressive liberal voters for white voters, and then he's got a good bit of the black vote as well. Right, he's in second place to Crowley with black voters. I think Crowley's at 44% with black voters, if I recall correctly, who are, I believe, 7% of the survey. And But, you look at the Barnes second choice, right? I don't know if we
Mhm.
went over kind of the second choice thing here, but,
Yeah,
you know,
why don't I pull that up on the
yeah,
screen here for a second? Because I
because I
think
think
that's
this is the big thing when we're talking about, for anyone who's like, you know, uh, uh, for anyone in those anti-Hong camps or whatever who's like, "We have to prevent her from being a nominee, she can't win, da, da, da," for anyone who's thinking that, Um, I don't know how angry they are with Crowley getting back in slash the governor endorsing him. But they should be, because you can see. Look at the scroll down a little bit. Let's just get to the among Crowley voters, among Barnes voters, right? Crowley voters, 34% have Barnes as their backup. And if we look at some of these other polls, right? Let me pull up. Let's see, Democratic primary, Wisconsin. Some of these recent polls. So, uh, Barnes's internal had him at 26. There was a Wedgwood poll, right, that had him at 30. Like, and the average he was at, like, in the 20s or 30s probably before this shakeup in the race, with Crowley getting back in, and now he's down in the teens. So, I think with that, with what we've seen in top lines and what we can see here with the second choices, is that, Crowley hasn't made the race more competitive. He's made it more firm for Hong, not, because he's mainly taken from Barnes voters,
yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
I think we can definitively say that. So, I mean, if Barnes were to drop out of the race, I mean, that just pushes Hong to a majority of the vote, right? Because you can see how. Now, I don't think I would be surprised if anyone dropped out of the race at this point. We're 2 weeks out,
Yeah.
but I don't know. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not making any predictions after how the last 2.5 weeks have gone with this race.
yeah,
But as you suggest, if among those Barnes voters, their second choice is split essentially between Crowley and Hong. It's not
mhm,
like they would all go towards Crowley either. And you have this other really terrific graphic that I'm going to pull up here as well, of just showing.
yep. It's
Um,
called a Sankey diagram.
that's fun. Uh,
Yep.
so we have some of that information here as well, and I think it really just shows, even if some of these candidates were to drop out and consolidate, there would be a significant chunk of their voters that would just go to Hong.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So, um,
I'm
no.
fascinated with the I've mentioned this on previous podcasts before too, but I'm fascinated with the very small sliver of Francesca Hong, Jill Brennan voters.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's
I
that's
called that out on
that's
a previous podcast. I actually got a couple really thoughtful emails from people who were Hong Brennan voters,
there
which
you
is
go.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
think
but
what's
I
really telling here also, if you can see here, is that um, Hong has such a big concentration of her voters who just go to don't know if she dropped out, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I think that shows like how firm her base is, how like new these voters are that she's brought out, that would if she were to lose the primary, which I don't think can happen at this point, would be a concern in general. It's like, are these voters going to come out in general? But she's going to be the nominee, at this point. And again, unless again she hit someone with a car or whatever. But um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think that was something really interesting to say, and we have this in a crosstab of, you know, uh, in our crosstabs we have like the second choice preferences among like who they're planning to vote for and everything as well.
yeah. Fascinating stuff. And then just quickly on David Crowley, just on who his coalition is. One thing jumped out to me, and this is my Milwaukee bias showing. I really thought it was really fascinating how you pulled by area code
Mhm,
in Wisconsin. And in that 414 Milwaukee area code, um, you know, I, Hong is still in first, but she is tied for first with
mhm,
David Crowley in that 414 area code. She's under the 44% that she gets overall. She's at 33%. Crowley at 33%, and Barnes just at 13%. And he's from Milwaukee, but as somebody from Milwaukee as myself as well is like I expected Crowley to do better here than Mandela Barnes did from the very outset of the race.
Yeah,
He's the Milwaukee
this
County
was
Executive. He's more visible, like on a day-to-day basis in the media here. He won re-election in Milwaukee County with basically unopposed, and so I did expect him to do better here. But I also, I was in Eau Claire over the weekend with doing this event with Ben Wickler, and I think Crowley's challenge has always been his notoriety or just name ID outstate in outside of southeastern Wisconsin. And I talked to one person who is engaged enough to go to a political event with Ben Wickler on a Sunday night and said until he launched his campaign, they did not know that David Crowley was black. So that's how little name recognition he has in a place like Eau Claire, even among politically engaged folks.
yeah.
And so I think, you see that in some of the crosstabs where he doesn't do as well outside of Milwaukee. But I do think it is interesting that he did as well as Francesca Hong in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Well, so this is something in the team notes. If you go to the briefing, you scroll down page 9. It's this is what our elections coordinator Michael Foley said. Respondents with cell phone area codes outside Wisconsin, FIBS, I believe is the term.
You got it. You got it.
Most likely younger Wisconsin transplants are the most likely to back Hong, 55%. Follow those by with Milwaukee Suburban 262 area code, 51%, and Madison 608 at 47%. Crowley, like you said, Crowley and Hong are tied at 33% in the 414 area codes, but cell phone area codes aren't always tied to county or current area of residence, right? This is their actual cell number. Older residents in particular may still have 414 area codes from before the 414 was split in the late 1990s, right? So yeah, I mean, these transplants are quite liberal in these primaries. They're younger, so that's probably why. But yeah, I mean, with Crowley, his base is definitely black voters, and he's definitely got some support in Milwaukee. I think he'll have trouble outside of Milwaukee. I think Hong is probably on track to win maybe every county besides Milwaukee, if I were to guess.
The Bernie 2016 number, essentially, right?
Correct. That or, I mean, this primary is kind of similar to the 2018 governor primary, right? I mean, Evers got 41%.
Right.
She looks like she may get to 41%. She underperforms our poll a little bit. Or she'll beat Evers. And I think that's the question is she going to beat Evers not only in percentage, but also in terms of raw vote? I think that would be interesting. And kind of show how much she has remade the electorate. Also, on kind of talking about 2018 here, I think in Crowley, Crowley has made electability the focal point of his campaign. I think that's a mistake. I think Haley Stevens has made that the focal point of her campaign, and for some reason, Angie Craig has made that the focal point of her campaign. These are all mistakes. This is not 2018. Democratic primary voters, what they think is that there's this big blue wave coming, which in all likelihood it is. You look at Virginia, you look at the Gallup quarterly party ID, you look at New Jersey, you look at special elections and everything, right? Everything shows that this is probably going to be 2018, if not a little bit bluer. So to heck with electability is kind of what they're thinking. Now, we did update our forecasts. And people can go to it there. It's, the odds of a Democratic trifecta in Wisconsin have definitely plummeted. It's not impossible by any means. I'm not going to spoil too much. People can go to the forecast, but, we have shifted out Mandela Barnes, who we had in our initial forecast several months ago with Francesca Hong. Chris was like, well, she's going to be the nominee, so let's just switch it out now. We'll see if, I think people can make a strong argument for that. This is a gamble, right? That this is, they could have gone for a comfortable win with Mandela Barnes, as pretty much every bit of data we have shows. Or they go for maybe a narrow victory with Hong, which, looking at the Marquette poll could be the case, or she could lose. But yeah, Wisconsin will
There's a ton of
be.
risk involved. We can't understate that. There's a ton of
It
risk
will.
involved.
Wisconsin will probably be another nail biter. Who could have guessed?
Same as it ever was.
Very rare. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Chaz. Well, I appreciate you taking some time with us here at the Recombobulation area. To everyone out there, go check out this poll. Go check out the breakdowns. It's really fascinating stuff. And we'll, of course, continue to follow your work at State Navigate as we look ahead to the general election, as we look ahead to the state legislative races. This is a fork in the road election for the state of Wisconsin. This is the first open race since 2016. This is the first fully post-gerrymander election that Wisconsin has had under new maps, with the other half of the state Senate finally being up this year. This is a huge, huge year for Wisconsin politics, and we will look to your wealth of data as we continue to try to understand what's happening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And people can go to just statenavigate.org, statenavigate.org for any state. But if you want to go to Wisconsin, it's statenab.org/WI. And we have a whole bunch of data, not just polls. We have election data, we have demographic data, we have primary election data, candidate campaign finance data, including from the governor primary, if I recall correctly now. List of contributions and expenditures, all that sort of thing. We are the website for state legislatures. So if you like state legislatures, go to statenavigate.org.
Yep, absolutely. Go check it out. All right. Thanks again, Chaz. Be well.
Yep. Thank you, Dan. Bye.